Little Red Riding Hood. A little girl lives in a cottage with her mother. She has a red riding hood. She likes it very much, and she always puts it on when she goes out. That is why everybody calls her Little Red Riding Hood. One day, her mother says to her, "Please, Little Red Riding Hood, take this pot of butter and this cake to your grandmother. She is always very glad to see you." "Yes, mother," says Little Red Riding Hood. She puts the cake and the pot of butter in a basket and walks to her grandmother's house. On the way, she meets a wolf. She does not know how bad the wolf is, so she is not afraid of him. "Good morning," says the wolf. "Where are you going, Little Red Riding Hood?" "Good morning, Mr. Wolf," says Little Red Riding Hood. "I'm going to see my grandmother. I'm taking her a pot of butter and a cake." "Where does she live?" asks the wolf. "She lives far away in the wood," says the child. "I must go to see her some day," says the wolf, and he thinks, "I want to eat you now, but I'm afraid of the woodcutters." The wolf walks with the child. "Look at those pretty flowers," he says. "Pick some flowers for your grandmother." "Dear grandmother is always glad to have some flowers," says the girl to herself. So she stops to pick some flowers. But the wolf does not stop. He goes to the grandmother's house and knocks at the door. The grandmother asks, "Who is there?" The wolf makes his voice soft and says, "It's Little Red Riding Hood." "Open the door, dear, and come in," says the grandmother. Then the wolf goes in and eats up the old grandmother. He puts on the grandmother's dress and bonnet and lies down in her bed. By and by, Little Red Riding Hood comes to her grandmother's house. She too knocks at the door. "Who is there?" asks the wolf, and he tries to speak like the grandmother. But his voice is not so soft. His voice is not like the grandmother's voice. "I'm afraid my grandmother has a very bad cold," thinks Little Red Riding Hood. And she says, "It's I, Little Red Riding Hood. Mother sends you a cake and pot of butter." "Open the door, dear, and come in," cries the wolf. Little Red Riding Hood goes in. She thinks it is her grandmother in bed. She takes off her red riding hood, puts the basket on the table, and goes to the bed. "Oh, grandmother," she says, "what big eyes you have." "They're better to see you, my dear," says the wolf. "Oh, grandmother," she says, "what big ears you have." "They're better to hear you, my dear," says the wolf. "Oh, grandmother," she says, "what sharp teeth you have." "They're better to eat you up," says the wolf, and he jumps out of the bed. He is just going to eat her up when the woodcutters hear Little Red Riding Hood's cries. One of the woodcutters runs into the house and kills the wolf. Then the woodcutters open him up, and the grandmother comes out quite safe. Little Red Riding Hood thanks the woodcutters, and now she never stops to talk to a wolf.